Yeah.
Park ranger pulls up on us. He's like, sir, can I check you guys for your fishing licenses? And my dad's like, I reckon so. He walks up to us and he checks them, this and that. I was younger at the time. I was probably like 16, 17, 18, somewhere around in there. I was driving because I had my own truck. My dad had his truck, and we just happened to meet up out, or we met up, and then we went out there. And so the park ranger's like, is he old enough to drink? And my dad said, what does it matter? He's my fucking son, And he's like, well, we just had to check. He says, it doesn't matter if he's my son and I want him to have a beer, he's going to have a beer. Yeah. So Dad was a Coors man the whole way. Coors straight up, the banquet beers. So anyways, we're drinking these beers, and I'm drinking my beers with shop of Dad, because Dad trained me.
Right.
Just like I'm sure your dad trained you back in the day.
Yeah.
So anyways, we're sitting there, and he finally got this guy off of us, this and that. And he lays like, we just had to check, since the fisherman out. And he's like, yeah, y'all go and do your thing. We're going to do our fishing and stuff over here. And if my boy drinks a beer, then that's okay, because that's my boy. Now, I guess not paying attention that we both have trucks, and I'm about to drink and drive. So, and knowing Dad, if you know Dad, back in the day, we probably had about 8 at this point. And my little ass out there like, well, we're good. I'm keeping up with you, Daddy. But we're out there fishing. We're having a good old time. Dad has his line thrown way the hell out there. And I'm over here throwing lines. And my dad made a comment. He said, and it really touched me. He's like, it's really good to fish with you when you're not just sitting there throwing rocks at my freaking bobber. And I'm like,
in other words, he's going back to when you was young.
Yeah. But so
I know that feeling.
Right. So park ranger's gone. We're fishing. We're having a good old time. So after a little while, my dad's, we caught a couple things. Get some hits. Nothing comes in. Caught a catfish. Caught a bass. This and that. We put them in the stringers, or the basket at the time, and we're having a good time. Then after a little bit, we're drinking beers, and of course I wasn't smoking then. I was younger. Dad was smoking. He'd be like, "Hey, light me up a cigarette. Bring it here." And I'd go to the truck and I'd be like,
that's probably how you started smoking. Yeah.
Probably was. So I'd go light him a cigarette, bring it over to him. And he's like, I think you got a bite. I said, I said, what do you think this is? I don't know. It's just hitting it. And here's my dad. You might not get the story. This son bitch was funny as hell to me. My dad's sitting there and he's like, he's not pulling. He's not setting it. He's not doing this. He's like,
he's moving it.
Yeah, he's just moving. He's like, little twist, little touch. He's like, something's hitting on me. He goes, I think it's a snake playing with my bait. I said, Dad, we don't catch snakes. We just catch fish. And he's like, I think it's a snake. And I was like, Dad, there ain't no snakes out here. And he's like, yeah, there's snakes everywhere, son. They just don't always make their presence known. So we're sitting there after a little bit, and then finally my dad wow, pulls it hard. Right? This fucking line is way the hell out there, and I guarantee it's 75 yards if it's anything. Because my dad taught me in life, when you fish plumb and nearly.
Exactly.
If you're on
plumb
the bank,
across the lake, and nearly to the other side.
Yep. You know the stories.
I know it. I've heard them stories.
So we're sitting there, and I'm looking, I'm holding my line, I'm watching my dad's line, and I'm doing my little work here, working my little, my little bait, this and that. And he's over there working his, and he sets it, and I set the pole down. I'm like, what you got? And he says, son, I think it's a snake. And I was like, don't be catching no snakes, Dad. Because he knows I was definitely terrified of these things.
Right.
So
I know them stories.
Right. You ever seen that old video on Facebook where that guy's coming around the corner looking at his cat? And he comes back.
Oh, yeah, they're running.
He takes up, and the cat's right there, and he pulls back. The cat takes steps right there. They called it the ninja cat because it took a step. And he showed the cat. That's how it was with Dad. Dad was looking at me like, it's just a snake. And I'd be a step closer, Dad, we don't catch snakes. And he'd be reeling in a little further, look at me, and he's like, what you doing? I'm reaching in my pocket. I'm like, we don't catch snakes, Dad. That better not be a snake. It better be a damn fish. And he's sitting there. He's starting to grin. He says, son, I think it's a snake. So my hand's all the way in my pocket. He's like, what you doing? I said, don't you worry about me, Dad. You just catch that fish because it ain't no snake. Gets a little further. pulls it up, and it still ain't popping the water. It ain't coming out of the water. He's reeling it. And I'm sitting there with my hand in my pocket. I'm looking at my dad. I'm like, if this motherfucker pulls up a snake, I'm going to be screaming and shit. And I'm like old enough to fight some people, you know. I shouldn't be screaming, especially in front of my father. And so he pulls up this one boy. He looks at me and he's grinning. He's like, don't you cut my line. And he looks back at me. And I'm like, I ain't going to cut your line if it's a fish. And he said it reels a little bit more, and I take another step. Next thing you know, he looks at me, my hand's in my pocket, and I got my knife. I ain't pulled the blades yet. But I'm sitting there like, if that's a snake, I'm cutting your line. He's like, he's got that old English accent because Canada. He's like, would you cut my line? Get me a beer. And I'm like, I'll get you a beer. I give him a beer, I pop the top, I take a drink, I set it down for him. Do anything good, so you take, right. You got to taste drink your dad's beer. Right. Set it down.
Oh, yeah, did that mean the time?
Yeah. So he's sitting there, he's reeling it. I take another step to him. He's like, Eddie, don't cut my line, man. And he's reeling, and I pull out my blade. I'm watching. He's watching. He's looking at me. I'm looking at him. I'm looking at that line, and I'm like, and he still has not breached the water of whatever this is. He goes, baby, it's a bass. He says, got some fine.
Because he's just not wanting you to cut his line at this point.
And we just re-threaded them fucking lines out. So he's sitting there reeling in. And he finally pulls in. And I step a little closer. He's like, don't cut my line. I step a little closer. Don't cut my line. We don't even know what it is yet. He reels it in. Here it is. Just like 15 feet off the bank. He pulls it really hard. The biggest copper or water moccasin head I ever seen in my life. Come up, big old diamond shaped.
Yeah.
To me, it looked like the size of that damn guitar bass. As soon as I saw that thing, I went. I cut that line. Man, my dad was pulling so hard, he went wham with that line. He said, what the hell did you do that for? I said, well, we don't catch snakes. You taught me that back when we was kids. He's like, he just starts laughing, reeling up. He's like, you want to re-thread it? He's like, let's just get in the fucking truck and go to Wayne's and eat a barbecue sandwich. That's the biggest damn snake. And when he was telling me the story, he's like, I swear to God, that thing was like 30 pounds.
Shit.
I was like, that had to be the fight. He goes, why didn't you let me bring it up? We could have skinned it. It's a snake, Dad.
We don't
catch snakes.